Yo guys, it's s1mple here. Today I wanted to look in depth into who's the greatest of all time Counter-Strike player. Considering that CSGO has now come to a close, I think in the conversation there's mainly four names that have been tossed around so far. That's s1mple, Device, ZywOo, and m1NESY. m1NESY's a kid. He's done basically nothing in his career so far. He's just a young guy. Basically just came up on the scene. And then you have ZywOo. ZywOo is like... ZywOo doesn't have enough longevity, in my opinion, to be classed as the greatest player of all time. You compare ZywOo's style to s1mple's devices, it's kind of irrelevant considering ZywOo's style wouldn't exist without either of them. ZywOo isn't innovative in the way that s1mple and Device are. ZywOo is just a straightforward, textbook, standard great player. And I think although that is a very good skill to have, I think when you look at someone who being the greatest of all time, you have to look at how they came up into the scene, what the building blocks they had around them were. And when you look at s1mple and Device, yeah, they were surrounded by great players. You know, s1mple being coached by Hiko, Device having Zonic and the rest of TSM and Astralis around him. TSM respectively before it was Astralis and Copenhagen Wolves. But those teams, and while there was a good support structure, it's not nearly as much support as ZywOo had with being able to be influenced by other AWPers. You know, s1mple being famously having great influence from Guardian, which you can't barely see in his playstyle. I mean, I think s1mple just looked up to Guardian more of a, you know, like an idealistic way instead of in terms of gameplay purely. And then Device, on the other hand, kind of created his own style, taking more passive and less risk-based plays and making safer calls than s1mple does, which is something I want to talk about more in the video. Because when you compare s1mple versus Device, the conversation was always, oh, Device is better positioning. And I think that is complete garbage. What you gotta understand about positioning, it's not just about what makes you what's the position that 9 out of 10 times gets you the most kills. Because when you have s1mple's skill set, what s1mple is considering is a risk assessment, okay? He knows the positions he's going into are high risk, but he also knows the high impact, but purely because of his skill set. Device, although having a high skill ceiling, prioritizes positioning over taking high risk and having high impact, because for Device, that's the safer option. But for s1mple, with his insane mechanics, he understands the risk that he's taking, and I think that's a very important thing to think about when you're comparing the two players in terms of positioning. Because yeah, they're both great at positioning, but they're great in completely different ways. That doesn't make one better than the other. So I think mechanically, at the end of the day, it's just gonna have to be s1mple. And to prove it, I want to show you a game from Na'Vi versus Astralis back when Zeus was on Na'Vi. This is from a while ago, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, guys, so we're here on Overpass. We'll be looking at Device's POV here. And this is a very important round, round 11. For context, s1mple, this entire game hasn't brought up. But look at the call here. Look at the game sense from s1mple. It's just such a legendary call. s1mple knows that in order for Astralis to win this round, they know they have limited utility, and this is where before you could drop utility to other players, so they know that having limited utility is a lot bigger of a deal back then than it is now. They know they have limited utility, and this means they're going to take more aggressive peaks. And s1mple also knows that they're taking a timeout. That means they're discussing a set play or a couple of ideas that they need to run through and a couple of ideas that they want to implement into this round. And s1mple knows that, well, he reads that Device is going to peak monster. How? Well, Na'Vi's setup for the entirety of the T-half has been 5 rifles, which means no resistance to holding monster if you're peeking up an AWP as a CT. And Na'Vi have started always one guy holding the monster peak with an AK. Now, Charlotte's picked up on this, and they want Device to go in for a late smoke monster phase. So Device is going to sit on site, and s1mple mysteriously reads this. He's just sitting at the back of monster holding with his peak. The first time in the entire match, 11 rounds in, this is the first time. And look what's about to happen. Device comes out wide. Is he ready to peek deep? That's not something you can teach. This is something that s1mple has implemented in his own playstyle. Just his read on the game is absolutely sensational compared to any other player. I think that's what makes s1mple such a strong opponent, in my opinion. His reading of the macro and the micro movements of his opponents. It's such an underrated and unique skill that takes years and thousands of hours to master. I think that's what makes him such a strong player. Another clear difference between Device and s1mple is how aggressive s1mple is compared to Device. As I said earlier in the intro about positioning and risk management, I think Simple understands risk taking enough to be able to be aggressive without being punished for it. And I think the best way to demonstrate this is by the mid peaks that each of them do. Simple's gonna get an AWP here from Zeus, and he's gonna go for a mid peak. And it has the weirdest and most unique way to peek middle overpass I've ever seen. Let's just watch. He just runs through toilets, and he stays close mid, fully unscoped. He doesn't jump on the dustbin like you'll see AWPers like Kenya's do. He stands here waiting for H to spin up. It's obviously just some pre-planning. No scope, just no scope. Looks for the close quarters fight. Here's the flashbang, sees the guy jiggling, scopes up and gets the kill. Immediately rotates. Immediately. He knows that Astralis' game plan in this round, especially considering the only rifle that Na'Vi should have here, is this one AWP on Simple. And Astralis obviously knows this. He knows the immediate reaction is going to be B, so he tries to reach B before the Astralis expecting him. And look here, Astralis don't have a heaven smoke. So what's going to happen? Simple's going to start picking players off from heaven, and he immediately rotates again. See, Simple's positioning is on par with Device's in terms of rotation. He makes all the correct rotations, and he makes this aggressive decision. Do you see this? He did not just come down to CT and hold the angle to short. He went forward, no scope, just ran onto site to support his teammate in Zeus. This is very high risk, but Simple knows that he can pull it off. And I think that's what makes Simple such a strong player and such a elite tier 1, the greatest of all time player to ever touch CSGO. It's just small little micro details like this that you can't teach to someone the same way you can teach Device's positioning to. Device's positioning relies very heavy on fundamentals. Simple's relies on a lot of mechanics and a great understanding of the micro and macro game, which you can't teach. That's not something you can learn from watching a demo, because these skills that he has, he applies to every single situation. It's not just something you can watch a demo on and you can be like, I'm going to peek mid like Simple now. He understands what's about to happen, and Device does in a very similar way, but he utilizes it differently. Device, how he utilizes holding angles, is very much reliant on game sense, the same way Simple is, where Simple has the confidence to go out with no scope, which is obviously very dangerous. And they both rely heavy on reads. And I want to show you a clip from Device's CT side to showcase this best. Device does something very weird. The way he peeks angles, it relies heavy on a read. Like, look at the angle he's peeking. He is fully exposed from the front of bathrooms, but he's peeking deep towards banana. This is a peek that he's relying purely on his game sense and his read. And then he shoulders out. It takes off 2 players. You see, he takes a shot, falls back, turns to dumpster, and get another kill. I think this is why people love Device's position. It's so calculated, it's so safe, to the point where anyone can implement it into the game style. Which is why it's very easy to say that Device is better at positioning than Simple. Which I just think isn't true, but Device has very good positioning in his own respect. That was very safe, it was very clean. He gets 2 kills, taking shots, falling off the angles, playing. Value his positioning a lot more than they value Simple's, because Simple's positioning is only unique and special and valuable once you understand what he's actually thinking. It's very easy to look at Simple's positioning and think he has no, but it's extremely calculated, extremely. Yeah, so we're here on round 8, and today I just want to show you Device's rotation, as you saw in the beginning bit when we're watching Simple's POV. Simple likes to rotate through low. Let's look at how Device rotates through low. He comes in with a smoke in hand, because they obviously can't be on side yet, and he's playing an off angle with the AWP, which is very uncommon, because AWPers you generally expect to have faster reaction time than a rifle, because you're going to have to stop with a rifle, so it's much easier to hold an AWP. But Device doesn't take that risk. He chooses to play an off angle instead. I'm going to see Device moving back and forth across the map. He runs back to A, he does a little jiggle here, goes to bank because he realizes it's a safer angle, considering they could be close long. Of course, takes out his AWP. And I wanted to show you again, he's doing that thing where he overexposes himself in a calculated way. He knows that it's very unlikely that someone's going to be front bathroom holding guts. And he's fully aware of that, and he's totally fine with just standing there, holding long, delaying this guy. I don't know how Edward escapes there. If you look on the radar, he just fully dipped. I don't know how. I thought he was stuck in the corner, but he's left. And Device makes this rotation to B. He hears Heaven get smoked, so he knows has to go lower. And he goes lower, but he makes a mistake here. He knows that he can't rotate to Heaven. Instead of going back and positioning, he re-peeks. and it cost them around. Now, obviously, time pressure, that could be a factor. I think Vice is so used to having these set pathways, like, I'm sure if Heaven wasn't smoked, he would have went Heaven, but he's just used to having these set pathways to the point where he doesn't, if he has to re-peek an angle, he kind of does it in almost like he's given up. It's really weird to watch, but other than that, like, I mean, it was a really tough CT side for Astralis. You can't really say anything about that. But I just wanted to compare s1mple versus Device, and I hope I've done that today. I hope I've done justice to the question as to who's the greatest player of all time in CSGO. And thank you for watching, guys. Remember to like and subscribe. Peace.